Richard Gadd, I know Netflix approached you about adapting your stage show, Baby Reindeer, into a series, but had you thought about bringing it to the screen before then?
Yeah, I think I always thought that it had televisual potential. I even when I was writing the play, I kept thinking, it's kind of it has quite a lot of interesting things that would work in the television realm. Like I think the characters were quite interesting, and it's a thriller. It had a sort of fast pace, kind of breathlessness to it that I think works in the thriller genre. So yeah, I think always in the back of my mind. Firstly, I wanted it to succeed as a theatre show, but in the back of my mind, I thought, yeah, I hope it does go on to have a life beyond the stage for sure.
Mhm. What were the challenges of transforming a one-man stage show into 7 episodes of television? 'Cause, I know you've obviously had to like tweak certain elements and for structural purposes. So what were some of those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, it was so challenging. Basically, the live show was just me on a stage with a stool. The stool represented Martha. I'd move the stool around the stage, and I'd tell a story. Basically, this thing happened, and then this other thing happened, and it was great production. But to expand it into something that I think was about 4 or 5 times the length of the live show, different characters, how they look on screen, how the layers they have, introducing dialogue, all kinds of things. I mean, it was a complete transformation. I was very keen, though. I was very precious and protective of the play. I was very keen to sort of not soil its memory because it was such a popular play, and a lot of people loved it. And I was really worried all the way through the writing process of the TV show that I was just really worried that I would sort of denigrate its memory in some way, but so I worked really hard, like exceptionally hard to adapt it, but I really wanted to keep the this sort of energy, the feel, the pace of it. The live show was a very sort of pacey thing. And I thought if I keep the energy, if I keep the kind of honesty, if I keep the sort of voice and the authorship, then it'll all be okay. But it was a hell of an adaptation. I mean, it took a long, I can't remember how long the writing process was, but it took a while for sure. It was a big adaptation.
Mhm. Well, this is obviously such a personal story for you, and you also told an aspect of it in Monkey See, Monkey Do, and the stage is so different from millions of people watching it on screen on Netflix. So, what were you most concerned with about putting the story on screen that maybe you weren't as concerned with about putting it on stage?
I mean, it's always a nerve-wracking process. I think putting any art there out there into the world, whether it's to two people or 200 million people, it's always quite vulnerable and quite nerve-wracking. I think just the big difference, I suppose, with this was just how many eyeballs were on it at once. I mean, it felt like Baby Reindeer was released on the 11th of April, and I think I sat at home thinking, okay, well, maybe a couple of people will watch this weekend. Maybe I'll get a few text messages this weekend. And it just seemed the second it went out at like 8 in the morning in UK time, it just seemed to explode. I felt like my phone's been ringing ever since. I feel like I was immediately kind of going. I suppose what brings that is a level of fandom that I've never had. I've always had a kind of quite a loyal fan base, like through the other work I've done, but it's just brought such an intense spotlight to me, which brings lots of conversations and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's hugely sort of gratifying that so many people have been positively impacted by this show, and so many people have responded in the way that they have. I guess it's like the same feeling as doing a live show, that sort of vulnerability, that anxiousness, but just on a much bigger scale. But I always think that if I don't feel like vulnerable or anxious or worried, then something would be wrong.
Right.
I think it's good that I feel those things. I think it means I care. I've never quite trusted people who don't get nervous. Sometimes like it's when they put their stuff out there. I feel like it feels so vulnerable to me that it feels only natural that I would be. But this was a nerve wracking one for sure.
Hmm. And I mean, this has obviously been called a stalker story, but I feel like that's so simplistic and also
Mm.
kind of a disservice to it because you don't really tell a black and white stalker story of, evil, crazy stalker and innocent victim. And the show also doesn't really take a moral stance on anything. It just kind of presents all sides. So what was that writing process like for you to make sure you get that nuance across?
Yeah, yeah, it was hugely important to me. You know, I always wanted to explore trauma really more than I did anything else. I, I always thought that the way like the show would be packaged and sold is it's a stalker story, but you look close, you unwrap the, the bow a bit, and you look inside, and it's a show about trauma. Like everyone from not just Martha and Donnie and everyone, but even Donnie's dad and Nava, they all have their own battles, their own internal struggles that they go through. And I really wanted to show the complications of trauma, which trauma can feel so messy and create such odd behaviors in people, that I really just wanted to demonstrate that on screen. It was very important to me that the show was kind of layered and contradictory and kind of weird and uncomfortable, because that's kind of what trauma is, and that's what I wanted to express and show.
Mhm. Yeah, and I feel like the story is also one of empathy for all of the characters, right? And no
Mm,
one is totally a hero or a villain. And you are also, I think it goes back to what you were saying, like you like feeling nervous, like you're also hard on yourself, and your role in this reciprocal relationship with Martha. And how hard was it to hold yourself accountable and admit that you were essentially part of this problem because you were indulging in her, because I feel like most people probably would not want to admit that, they were at
mm.
fault for being stalked.
Yeah, it felt quite. I think I was nervous about that aspect. It felt quite kind of one of the most unnerving parts of it was kind of admitting that I'd made mistakes in an age of kind of when morality is kind of so at the forefront of society and culture in this industry and everything. And it was very nerve wracking, but I'd certainly rather like put myself forward as like I don't know, someone who's made mistakes than kind of sell out on the truth of the story, because I always think that art, you lose art the second it becomes like dishonest almost in a way. I always think like if it's truthful, you can't really argue with it. And the second I started, and there were drafts of Baby Reindeer in the early years when I did the live show where I really was cutting the truth out and really making myself look very good. But I thought it was more interesting, more radical, even to sort of actually just admit that I'd made mistakes. And I think anyone who watches Baby Reindeer, I think, can relate to the fact that they haven't always said the right thing in the right moment, that they've let people down in the wrong way, that they've made mistakes in love and in life and in all kinds of things. And I actually think that's why the story has resonated so much. I think that a lot of art and TV of late, not everything, but has kind of made its moral point so clear and so pure, and the characters have to be so good, especially the main characters and the central characters, and good and evil. It's all very clear. But I think life doesn't kind of work that way, and I think people were crying out to see these sort of inconsistencies of character and contradiction of character, like on screen, and I think that's why it's resonated so much.
Yeah, because we're really seeing the fallout of his kind gesture to this woman, and
Yeah.
obviously that has negative repercussions on his life. But then we also see that he's also a mess himself, and he has past trauma, and he
Hmm.
carries a lot of shame, and that influences a lot of the relationships that he has too. So
Yes.
yeah. Well, in episode 4, obviously we see the flashback episode, and we see the trauma, and on stage you're by yourself, and I know in Monkey See, Monkey Do, you're on a treadmill being chased by a monkey. But now on the show, you're reenacting this horrific event with an actor, Tom Goodman Hill is Darian. So, what was that aspect of it like? Now you've performed this by yourself for years, and now you're doing it on a set with another actor.
Yeah, it was very confronting. I mean, Monkey See, Monkey Do was kind of explored the ramifications. I was running on a treadmill, and you heard the voices in my head. I didn't speak until the very end of the show, and I was running, 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 and the monkey was chasing me, and it was all about these running from your demons. And then I stepped off the treadmill, and I kind of spoke about things, and that's what it was about. But to actually go back into it and reenact it almost, was very it was very difficult. I have to throw props to Tom Goodman Hill. I mean, he was an absolute gent. I mean, I those scenes were intense and they were tough, and they were like knife edge tough. The set was tense. Everyone knew that we were in for a tough. God, it was days and days of filming, in the Darien flat, and they were tough. They were tough days for everyone, and but I couldn't have asked for a better, not only a better actor, but a better guy to do those scenes with. So he really made it, you know, a lot more tolerable than it could have been. But it was tough. It was extremely difficult thing to do, and yeah, probably the hardest days of the shoot for sure.
Mhm. Was it difficult getting out of that headspace afterwards after you wrapped that episode?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, it was. It took a while to sort of unwire the show from me. I really committed to it to the nth degree throughout all the process, the writing, the acting, the sort of the editing process. For it to be good, it had to consume me, and it was my life 24/7. I just threw everything into it, including you know just pushing the performance and trying to capture that realism, and days like the comedy stage, I really had to get into that in a way that kind of can leave an imprint on you afterwards. But going back to this stuff was difficult, and yeah, it took a while to unwire it, to be honest, and it took a while to kind of come back to body and come back to a sense of self. It was a very difficult and challenging project, for sure.
Mhm. Well, like you said, like the show deals with trauma, and also I think it's very nuanced portrayal of sexual assault, and especially male sexual assault, and just the insidiousness of grooming and everything. And in the finale, we see Donnie go to Darian's place, and he offers him a job, and he accepts it, and we see him break down afterwards, and it's so tragic, but it still shows like that attachment you might still have with your abuser. And I wonder if you had any pushback of about including that scene in the show.
I think there was a lot of discussion around what that scene was trying to do. And I would always say to people, it's kind of one of the most truthful scenes in the show, if not the most truthful one. I think a lot of people at home, and there's been a lot of comments online and stuff like, why on earth does he do this? And it doesn't make sense. But I think in the mind of someone who has been abused, especially to that degree, it kind of does make sense. I think I'm not the first person to say this, but the kind of Stockholm syndrome, sort of odd attachment that comes with being abused for the abuser is there's been many a psychological study on it down the years, but Donnie goes to confront his abuser, confront Darian, and his confidence fails him, and he agrees to go back and work for him. It's so truthful to someone who's been abused. It's why someone similar to domestic abuse situations. What the question? Why does she or he keep going back? Why do they keep going back? But it makes a lot of sense because when somebody takes your power away, it's very easy to then for them to kind of use that power to manipulate you further, and or to seek sort of still seek affirmation from that person. And so yeah, so it was a very truthful scene. I'm really glad it made it in, and I think that whole sequence, I think from you know going back to the flat, finding the script, going to Darian's, and then listening to the voicemails all the way through to the end. I think it's probably my most favorite part of the entire series. I just think all of that is just weighted. I wouldn't change a thing about it. I don't think.
I mean,
Um,
so many people love the ending. I think it's brilliant, and just how it mirrors the pilot, obviously. And there have been so many different interpretations of it by fans. And have you heard an interpretation of the ending by anyone that has really stuck with you, like you hadn't thought about it that way?
I've heard about three or four interpretations, and I know what I wanted to achieve, but I'll never say it because I like the fact that it's ambiguous. I like the fact that people take different meanings and different things from it. Um, I like that, and I think I don't like it too much when, you know, writers or authors or whatever are like, no, this is what I meant by that, and you must understand that. I don't like labored sort of points and to sort of like say. I like the fact that people can take meaning. I like ambiguity. I like opaqueness, and I like audiences being able to interpret things in the way that they want. So I really, I'll never say, but I certainly know what I was trying to do for sure. But I love that people love that ending and talk about it and all kinds of things. And I don't want that conversation to stop. I think it's nice that people discuss and debate and all that kind of stuff. So I'll let them carry on.
Yeah, and I think it's also a refreshing reception to the ending because I also love like open-ended endings, kind of like that, like up to interpretation. But I feel like nowadays a lot of people want definitive endings. It's like what was supposed to happen, what did happen, and I like that the reaction to this ending is like people like it this way. Like it's up to what they want to put on it and what they think. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that. I like those endings. I really do. If I think about series that I've loved that have ended in kind of incredible, I always think of The Sopranos. I mean, people
and
still
people
debate
like
that
hated
ending.
it back then because they hated how open-ended. I was like, I thought that was great.
Yeah, it's amazing, but people still talk about it to this day, you know, and even I thought Succession recently ended, you know, with Kendall down by the kind of river. I thought similarly. I thought it was kind of an
What is he gonna
incredible.
do? You don't know, you could decide for yourself.
Yeah, exactly, and I like that. I don't. I think I like to sort of intellectually respect the audience and allow them to kind of draw their own interpretations from things for sure.
Mhm. I wonder how about, casting, Jessica Gunning as Martha for a second, because you obviously, play Martha in the one-man show, so what was it like seeing her bring Martha to life?
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I mean, I'll never say a bad word about Jess. I, I, I literally kind of praise her enough. You know that that show kind of hinged and hindered on her ability to be scary, vulnerable, funny, unsettling all at once, and sometimes in the same sentence. And you know, I think she's getting all the praise she deserves for it. I think it's one of the best on-screen performances I've certainly ever seen. You know, I think there's been made no secret that she had to work for the part. You know, I remember the first time she auditioned, I saw what I wanted in her. It was like it's hard to describe. It was like an energy thing. It's like a cuteness, like like an infantile damagedness, you know, that can turn o- at any second. But I saw it almost from the moment she came in, and I could tell she'd really thought about the audition, and I could tell that she'd really prepared. I always remember because one of the audition scenes was the zipping up scene in the end of episode one of my favorite scenes as well in the show, where they're sitting and she's like, I want to unzip people and climb inside them and all that stuff. And I remember she sort of did it, and she was leaning on her hand, and she was kind of like sort of speaking to me like this. And I just remember thinking, oh, she's really thought about how to lean on Donnie and how to represent that, rather than just sitting with a script and just pretending I'm across the room or whatever. She kind of planted herself in that moment. But yeah, I mean, I she's incredible. I couldn't really fault a single thing she did in Baby Reindeer. And you know, there were times on set where I would forget where I was because I was too busy going, God, she's so good. And I you would almost forget to come in with my line, you know. Yeah, I'll never say a bad word about her for sure.
Mm. I talked to her and she mentioned that scene too and how she was, rehearsing it with her friend, and Jessica thought that that line was so romantic, like unzipping a person and sleeping inside him, and her friend thought that was creepy.
Well, yeah, that's the thing with Jess as well. I never thought she was playing a character. She really I don't know, there was like a motivational
Yeah,
thing with
she
her,
she's
like
she's not a bad person. She might have done bad things, but I think she's,
yeah,
she's a lost soul.
yeah, absolutely. She just got it. She just is it, and you know, I think I honestly think she can do anything. I'd love to see what she does next. You know, I'm sure it's going to be unbelievable.
Well, speaking of what next, finally, you're working on your next project, Lions, and you're not going to
Mm.
be in that one. What can you tell us about it?
I don't think so. You know, I don't know. Who knows at this stage? I mean, it's I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, really. It's out there and it's, you know, in the press release. I think that's about as much as I can say. But it's a six-part, 45-minute BBC One show with a great company called Mantor Productions. I'm really proud of it. I'm writing it at the moment. I'm squeezing it in amongst all the madness of Baby Reindeer, and yeah, I'm really proud of it, and I really can't wait to get back on that kind of full time. You know, I miss writing, and I miss slaving away behind the laptop and being creative and stuff. So yeah, that's next, and yeah, just gotta get my head down soon and do a bit more on Baby Reindeer, and then get my head down on that.
Yeah. Sure. Well, can't wait to see that. Richard, it was great
Thank
speaking
you.
with you. Thanks so much for your time, and congratulations again on the show and everything.
Thanks so much. Great speaking with you as well. Thank you.